So, for example, when I told you that after hitting Masters, I fell down to Diamond 1, right there I was playing horribly, honestly.
Okay.
But then, I think it was 2 days after. Don't know how, picked Ramatva, hard carried like 3 games in a row, really hard hot streaks and really hard cold streaks.
Okay. And then, do you notice a pattern about any specific heroes that you play when those hot streaks or cold streaks, or is it just totally random?
So on Winston and Ramatva, they're actually 2 of my most consistent ones. Like I kind of rarely underperform on these 2. But on everyone else, it's kind of random. I'd say maybe it's about my mental sometimes, where maybe the day hasn't gone really well, so I also don't play very well.
So the problem with inconsistency, as you're describing it, is there are just so many factors. It's equivalent of like waking up and feeling like you have a headache. Well, what is it? Indigestion? Did you not sleep well? Did you stare too much at a screen? Did your neck cranked? Your eyes tired? Are you stressed? There's so many factors. So what you need to do is you need to kind of look at each factor individually, try to identify if it applies to you, and work at making it better. And then accept that, at least to an extent, some inconsistency is unavoidable. So let's look at all the lines that might be contributing factors for you. So contributing factor number 1 for you. So we talked about attitude. Okay, so attitude, mentality, right? If you are frustrated or tilted, or let's say you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, that's going to make you play worse, unfortunately. That's just how it is. I've worked with pro players, I've worked with bronze players. That's just how it works. So understanding that that's going to introduce some form of, or some level of inconsistency, number 1. Okay, let's keep going though. For you, number 2, you notice you said that I have less inconsistency on certain heroes. So here's the other thing as well, hero strengths. Now, for most people, this isn't as much of an issue because most people don't have such a beautiful hero pool like you do. But for you, you have a lot of heroes that you enjoy playing, which is awesome. However, it does mean that if you spend more time on, fill in the blank tank that maybe you're not quite as good at, then you're going to have a little bit of a harder time, which is going to give you the impression that I'm not playing as well, when the reality is that you're just not playing as well because you're just not quite as good at that hero. Make sense? Now, we can even add another thing on top of that, which we'll do, which is even adding on top of that is counters or maps. So in other words, if I'm playing, like, let's say Zarya, right? And they pick, I don't know, Winston, okay? Now, Zarya is quote-unquote countered by Winston, but like, let's say that your understanding of Zarya is incomplete. You don't know how to play versus Winston. You know how to play versus Orisa, you know how to play versus Diva, but you don't know how to play versus Winston. And like, let's say you don't know how to play in, let's say, Shambali or Nepal as Zarya. So you pick Zarya because you want to pick Zarya, and then you roll out on an unlucky counter, or an unlucky map, let's just say a matchup that you don't know how to do. Now all of a sudden you're playing badly as Zarya. Do you see that? But actually, you're not really playing badly as Zarya because you're just, it's an inconsistency problem. It's just bad luck. You just happen to not be playing very well on those particular counters and those particular maps. So we need to make you more a better understanding of maps, a better understanding of the hero, so that there's fewer bad circumstances. Now that's not all. The other thing is just matchmaker RNG. And obviously you know all about this one, right? RNG matchmaking. You might get a teammate who is just tilted. And the funny thing is we talk about counters and maps. That's bad RNG for your teammates, right? Oh shoot, I got a Zarya player that doesn't know how to play versus a Winston, right? But that's how it happens, right? You get somebody that just starts off poorly. There's so much human element in the matchmaking that makes it happen. Now, one other thing I'm going to notice, and this is about the general streakiness of the matchmaking as a whole. Let's just say MMR, you know what, I'll use text here. MMR streakiness. So I actually talked about this just a few minutes ago, but it's essentially that right now, my impression from what has been confirmed by developers and also my experience is that your MMR and your SR as a result does, in Overwatch 1, it would do a lot of this, right? Right?
Yep.
In Overwatch 2, it's more like this. and it tends to I wouldn't say overreact, but it's a lot more sensitive to you losing a couple of games in a row or you winning a couple of games in a row. In other words, like let's say you have a day where you're red hot, right? And you go on a win streak of like 6 and you go all the way up to Masters 3, okay? The game thinks that you're the greatest thing of all time, but maybe you aren't quite ready for Masters 3 yet. Maybe you're actually only Masters 4. So then the next day you pick a game, you go into a game, but you're a Masters 4 player and a Masters 3 MMR, Masters 3 lobby. How do you think you're going to play?
Well, obviously not as well.
Not as well.
It's likely that we can get stomped as a whole.
Right. So then what happens is then you don't play as well. You get stomped. The game goes, oh, shoot, this guy is not so good. And you're also combining that with your response to how you aren't playing so well. Maybe you get tilted. Maybe you get frustrated. Maybe you lose confidence. And then now you're playing even worse. And then that's when you go all the way to Diamond 2. And then at Diamond 2, the game is overreacted and placed you in Diamond 2 when you're not actually Diamond 2 necessarily, just that day. And then the next day or after a couple of days, what happens? You queue in a Diamond 2 lobby and you've reset your mental, you're Masters 3 player in a Diamond 2 lobby. What do you think is going to happen?
50k damage on Ramatha, yes. 8 annihilations per round.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I guess for you, here's what we need to do. Here's what we can fix. All right. Let's do this one in blue. We could fix or improve this. We can, even if you're the type of guy that wants to pick all the tanks and just be random, pick whatever, we can make it so that even with your weaker tanks, you have a better understanding of the matchups. So there's fewer times where you're doing absolutely trash. We can make this better, right? Maybe there's a map where you're really bad at. We make your weak points stronger so that there's less variance in your play. Make sense?
Yep.
This we can't fix. This we also can't fix. But we can also realize that both of these things are issues, and honestly, that even this is an issue. And ironically, being aware that this is an issue, and especially that these are issues, can actually help this become less of an issue. In other words, if I know that matchmaking might be RNG or that things tend to be streaky, I'm not going to be scared if I drop to Diamond 1 or Diamond 2 or Diamond 3, right? And I'm also not going to get too overconfident and too egotistical if I climb the Masters 2, because I know, it tends to go up and down. I can also go, I'm having a really bad day today. I'm getting frustrated or depressed or I'm not confident. That's normal. Everybody struggles with that, even Overwatch League players. So I don't need to be worried if I'm unconfident. That's okay. Let's just make today a good practice day, even if I lose most of my games, and we'll go at it again tomorrow. And even just a little bit of that is going to make your play look less like this and more like this. And that's what we want, right? Now, The reason why we want to fix inconsistency is not because, we don't like inconsistency. The reason why we don't want inconsistency is generally when you're getting unconfident and doing things like this is bad practice. Because when you're tilted or frustrated or not confident, it's bad practice. It's not that, you're losing games, because we don't care about losing games. You're always going to lose games. You're always going to eventually find somewhere close to a 50% win rate, depending on the rank, right? But we don't want to have days where you're not as good of a practice because you don't understand matchups. You're getting tilted at the matchmaking. You're getting tilted at your loss streak. You're getting tilted at your own play. This is what we need to fix, because we need to understand that inconsistency happens. Even if you're playing badly, we still need to stay focused. Try and work at your weaknesses with your matchups and your understanding. And then don't worry if you have a bad day. It doesn't matter if you plummet 2 or 3 ranks. You'll be right back again soon afterwards. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of this is educated, but it is not 100% for certain this is the case. This is from my understanding and my experience. This is how it works, okay? Mm-hmm. First question you're asking about, I'm jumping back and forth from Masters 1 and Masters 5 lobbies, right? Why am I sometimes in this, and then why am I sometimes in these lobbies? It's because to create shorter queues, the game is going to throw you into lobbies that are approximately close to your rank, and have you either be the dead weight or the dead lift. Do you catch me? Mm-hmm. Now, the match will be balanced as close as it possibly can to within, 50 SR, maybe a single rank, whatever, to where the team's average SR is close. but you might be expected to be one of the better players in the lobby or one of the worst players in the lobby, and the game will be balanced accordingly. So if you were thrown into a Masters 1 lobby on your massive loss streak, you might have been somewhere around here, right? More dead weight. Whereas maybe earlier on, if you got thrown into a Masters 5 lobby, it didn't mean that you were playing worse. It just needed you for a game really quick, right? As a carry player. So that's your first thing that you got. Now, whether that's good or whether that's bad, whether people would appreciate slightly longer queues and have a little bit less variance in their game, that's probably a good argument for discussion, and that's been beat to death on social media. I won't give my opinion. I think it's pretty nuanced. Anyway, that's how it is, okay? Sure. Now, within that, understanding that it's not saying that you're a Masters 5 player in a Masters 5 lobby or a Masters 1 player in a Masters 1 lobby is really, really, really important. Because the actuality of the situation is that the average SR of the lobby is very complicated. For example, if we add up the 5 players on team 1 and the 5 players on team 2, if we were to give them a numerical value, it might be Masters 3 team and Masters 2 team, right? So if Masters 3 team wins, whose MMR is going to get bumped up, right? Obviously this team, but not just bumped up, but bumped up a little bit extra because they were able to beat a Masters 2 team. You see what I'm saying? And this means that these guys losing are going to lose a little bit more than an average Masters 2 Masters 2 game because they were not supposed to lose to a Masters 3 team. At least there was a lower chance. It's like they had a 55% chance to win, let's say, right? And the game balances appropriately, right? If Masters 3 team loses, they don't lose much MMR because the game is expecting them to lose anyway. And the reason that this happens is because Matchmaker can't be perfect without making queue times ridiculously long. Now, even if the Matchmaker does a perfect job and we have a Masters 3 versus a Masters 3, the problem is that we don't know what Masters 3 is and what Masters 3 isn't. Have you seen the new stat that they give you where they say you were better than so-and-so percentage of players at your rank? You seen that?
I don't exactly understand that. I just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, okay. So basically what it says is Masters 5 is the old... You remember the old school SR, right? 3,500.
No, I've never played on the old school system.
The old school system was Masters 3 was 3,500 SR.
Okay.
Masters 5, excuse me. Masters 5. And then that went to Masters 4 was 3,600. Masters 3 was 3,700. And you're going to see where I'm going from here. 3,800.
Yeah.
And then 3,900. And then when you get to 4,000, you were essentially GM. Now, what would happen is you could lose 25 SR for a game, or you'd gain 27 SR for a game. And you could probably see my point here. A Masters 3 versus a Masters 3 is a pretty big variance because it could be 3710 average SR MMR versus 3790 SR, and they're the same rank. And that is a note. It's not very hard to notice, but it is a significant variance. So what the game does is it calculates that again into who wins or loses. So if you go even or even have a positive win-loss ratio, you still might lose more. You might actually drop a rank because you had a couple of lobbies where you should have absolutely won and you didn't. And the only games that you won were the games that you absolutely were impossible to lose, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what happens. The game doesn't judge stats. It only judges win-loss, but it has to incorporate the MMR and the matchmaker into it because not every game is literally pixel perfect, 3710 versus 3710, right? It's just not possible to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. Now, that explains some of your going even or going positive and not ranking up, or bouncing back and forth from lobbies to lobbies, from Master 5s lobbies to Masters 1 lobbies, but it doesn't explain your loss streak. Now, obviously, the vast majority of your loss streak was you, right?
Oh yeah.
And you know that. Now, but what you might not know is that the game used to be pretty slow at moving people up. You've heard of these unranked GMs, right?
Yeah.
Blizzard doesn't like those very much, for obvious reasons, right?
Understandable.
So what it's doing is it's doing this. It is quickly moving players that they feel are overperforming either up or down. And basically what it thinks is it's trying to get people that don't belong in certain ranks to quickly readjust. So they don't throw as many games either by being too good or too bad, right? This is also indirectly an action against boosters as well.
Yeah,
where you
it
can
just
get
looked like someone boosted my account and then I got back on.
pretty much. Now, the funny thing though is that every player in Overwatch 2 is boosted or smurfing one or the other. Because the difference between you on a good day and the difference between you on a bad day in a video game is pretty massive. I would say it's as much as like an entire rank. And I'm not saying Masters 5 to Masters 4. I'm saying Diamond 5 to Masters 5. And for some people, it's even worse. For example, you could be a player that really responds well to when you're confidently, but also has a tendency to like spiral out of control. I've seen players play a full 2 ranks lower, right? Back in the day, there was a really famous series where XQC got really tilted in like top 500, and he plummeted to Masters. The equivalent of like going from, I mean, it's really the equivalent of what you did.
Nice.
Right? And this guy was in the Overwatch League back in the day, right? So unfortunately, we can blame the matchmaker and get irritated at the matchmaker for getting us on these, me spiraling out of control. But imagine if it didn't do that. Imagine how many Masters games you would have thrown and still be struggling with now. You kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's also that's how it felt like in Dota, when you're on a really bad loss streak, except for it's like multiple weeks, and then you're just sitting there and you're like, yeah, I'm dog shit, but I'm not gonna do anything because I'm stuck here for the next 2,000 MMR.
You were in like what, Diamond 5 you said? Or Diamond before you de-ranked to Plat 1. What were you at?
Before I was Diamond 2.
Diamond 2, right? Diamond 2. So maybe it was a little bit harsh to drop all the way from Diamond 2 to Plat 1. I don't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes of the wheels, but imagine being a Masters 2, Masters 1 player and barely like going 5-5 in Diamond lobbies, right? That's a little bit. I'm not trying to trash you. The first thing that we talk about is me like completely dunking on you, but that's not exactly flattering. Okay,
I'm used to being dunked on. Don't worry.
Okay.
You can be a little harsher if you need to.
Okay. But my
especially
point
since like,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Or half of this VOD is me playing Mercy. The other half is Brig, and like. Me and my friend, he plays a lot of the flex supports.
Yeah.
And we wanted to get into like scrimming and joining like low tier teams just because that shit's fun. And all of our friends that did 5v5s, they fucking dipped. They don't like this game no more.
Oh man.
I mean, hey, it's understandable. Don't oh man them. I get it. But these are like the weakest parts of anything. I'll probably look like a plat player in this.
Okay. Well, that's my thing. Is it's like what we've identified is what I'm trying to do is point out the flaws with the system that you're playing in, but also try to be a little bit of their advocate to point out that like, hey, taking the responsibility away from them, putting on you a little bit, just so when we go on, we can actually figure out. But yeah, does all this make sense? By the way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So then let's keep going because obviously we've pointed out a problem here, but we don't know what to do about it. Do you have a track record of these upward and downward spirals, even if they weren't this extreme?
No, I am usually pretty headstrong and head fast with if I'm going even for more than 2 hours, I get off, or if I'm going like 50-50, or if I've lost 2 in a row, I'm off.
Okay.
That's usually how I am, but I'm telling you, bro, I don't know what it was. Well, no, I know what it was. It was that little fucking like GM marker on my profile. I wanted it so bad.
Yeah, but that's okay. But that's okay because it's not going to be the last time that happens, right? It's going to happen again, right? If you're the type of player that's consistent and doesn't have these issues too well, and you have some goals and you keep practicing and you're consistent, it'll happen again. And the next time it'll happen, you'll be a little bit more ready for it.